Colorado, and he's advised all of us as governors, myself and others that have talked to him about this issue, to be cautious, be careful, watch what happens in my state, learn from what we do and the successes or failures of what happens in our state. So I think being prudent means being cautious and methodical and making sure that we're answering the tough questions, and with empathy always to the people who say, hey, I'm getting relief. And you know, we need to put the science behind that to find out why they're getting relief and see if we can, in fact, come up with a pathway forward to make it a medical prescription.
What have you learned from Governor Hickenlooper along the lines of control? Because that's something they did struggle with when medical marijuana was first introduced into the state.
Well, I don't want to speak for Governor Hickenlooper, but my observation is I certainly, when I visited Denver, that they have certainly significant availability. I mean, there's shops on every other corner. And there's some concern that it's too prevalent. Of course, they have recreational use there, and what that impacts their labor force. I just came from a meeting here downtown at the 4th Street Clinic, and some people were trying to help with the Pamela Atkinson Homeless Trust Fund that some of your stations carried. And I asked one of the individuals, you know, it's nice that we've been able to help you. What could we have done to prevent you from having this difficulty in your life? What caused it? And he talked about underage drinking and use of marijuana. So we need to be careful about, in an attempt to help people, that we have an unintended consequences of hurting others, and particularly our youth. So I think we need to be careful, and that's the prudent path to follow.
Have you been to any of the states to see how the recreation happens, how medical, strictly medical programs work? Because obviously Colorado's.
Well, we've always kind of referenced California with a little bit of sense of humor, not always appreciated by everyone, but that sometimes it's really false medical needs as a way to get around the requirement of medical need to have recreational use. And you know, I think we want to be as frank and open and straightforward about, hey, if this is a product that can help alleviate pain and help people as a medical device, a medical product, then we ought to explore that possibility. I do recall that last week, I think the famous quarterback Jim McMahon, BYU and Chicago Bear fame, who now has mentioned that he's suffering from severe headaches. He's in a lawsuit with the NFL because of concussions and the sport of football, said that he was advocating for the legalization of marijuana, and he said that that's where I find relief from my headaches. And it's the only relief I've found. But then he went on to say, I don't know if it's making my headache better or if I just don't care anymore. So, you know, we need to find out what is the science behind it. And again, I don't want to make light of that. We just need to have good research and science, which I think everybody says should happen. So let's get the federal government on board and the states, get our universities, let's put some money into the study, get FDA approval, and we'll have a product that hopefully, under controlled circumstances, can be used to help medical conditions that maybe otherwise cannot be.
You vetoed constitutional carry 2 or 3 years ago. It's back. Has anything changed?
Well, I haven't seen the bill, so I don't know if anything's changed at all. And I know they talk about constitutional carry. The laws we have on the books today are constitutional. So I know they want to do really the intent is, as I hear, to do away with the requirement to have a concealed weapon permit. So to be able to carry concealed without a permit. What we have on the books now is constitutional. States have the right to put parameters on the use of Second Amendment rights. We've done that. But in doing so, and I've talked with Wayne LaPierre and the NRA and others multiple times, they like Utah. We are one of the most Second Amendment friendly states in America today. And we've been rated as the #2 best state for upholding Second Amendment rights and the right to bear arms. And we have our own unique way of doing it. Our concealed weapon permit program has been embraced by 30 plus other states around the country. And so it's worked pretty well. So we'll have to wait and see what comes up. You know, if it's the same we did the right I told before, probably we'll end up vetoing it.
Governor, Democrats has proposed a Medicaid expansion, another M word. Possibly not Utah, possibly another time, but just to let voters weigh in on what they want to see, given that legislatures had so much difficulty settling on the proposal. You've been very invested in this. Is that the way to go? Voters are, opinion?
Well, I guess there may be some benefit or some comfort that comes with the public weighing in on it on a non-binding vote, but that's the operative word, it's non-binding. And I don't think that there's anybody in the legislature that does not understand, kind of where the public is in wanting to have enhanced access to affordable health care, and particularly for those who are most vulnerable in our society. So I don't know that it helps in that regard. It's not till November. I'm actually focused on the here and now. We're in a legislative session where we can actually do something. And so my hope is, and I believe there is an appetite to do this, by the way, I hear people coalescing around different proposals there that will address this Medicaid issue and help particularly the people we call in the gap, the donut hole people. And so I would say let's put our emphasis on getting something done this session. It may not be perfect, may not be exactly what I'd like to have, but I'm going to work very diligently with the leadership of the House and the Senate to see if we can't get something done this session that will help alleviate some of the challenges for those vulnerable people.
Do you have concerns, though, that those proposals are going to limit the number of people who are in the limit coverage to just a small percentage of people in the gap? I heard maybe a third of the 40-some thousand expected to sign up, which is...
Well, my hope is we cover as many people as we can afford to do. And so the more, the better. And I think that's everybody's hope. Obviously, there will be some limitations based on available funds and what the politics would warrant and what we can get the votes on. So the practical aspect of politics is you've got to be able to get the votes to get anything to pass. And so I'm going to work very diligently with the leadership in the House and the Senate to see if we can't craft something that's going to give us the best coverage that we can and help these people in need.
Later today in committee, a bill will be presented by Representative Romero that will repeal the requirement of being drug tested to receive assistance through the Family Employment Program. What are your thoughts on that?
Again, not having seen the bill, it's hard for me to weigh in on the specifics of it. As a principle, as a concept, I don't know that it's asking too much to say if we're going to give you government assistance and give you taxpayers' money, we want to make sure that you are using the money appropriately. You're not wasting it. You're not using it for substance abuse problems and other issues. And also, I would think along with that is if you happen to have a substance abuse problem, let's get it out in the open. Let's help you. If we're going to give you some government assistance, whether that's through the TANF program or food stamps, in the SNAP program, okay, we're happy to help you. If you have a drug problem, let's help you with that one too, so you don't waste the money over here that the taxpayers are funding. So they ought to be done together in concert, and I have no problem with drug testing, but along with that we'll have drug helping and make sure that we help people get off a substance abuse problem.
Senator Wiley has a resolution declaring pornography a public health crisis. Do you agree that it's an epidemic?
I don't know what the definition of an epidemic would be here, but I do believe that pornography and the production of pornography and the consumption of pornography has been growing exponentially. I mean, it's a big industry out there. And there ought to be some concern. I've been to different conferences on pornography. I've heard people get up and talk about the addictive impact it's had on their life. And as they become addicted to pornography and harder pornography, the debilitating effects it's had on their own life, their own relationships with spouses, their family, and the issues that have caused them great grief. And we ought to listen to those people, and we ought to understand if there in fact is this issue out there of addiction with pornography. Certainly a lot of people out there saying, I've become addicted, and their life seems to demonstrate that to be true. So I agree that it's something that needs to have the discussion, and certainly for me is a concern, particularly as it becoming more and more readily available to our young people, impressionable minds that get a distorted view of what relationships are really about. And so I think Todd Water is bringing an awareness to us to, hey, rethink what's going on out there. And we ought not to just give it a pass by saying, well, this is Second Amendment rights. Maybe, but let's understand the downside of this. It's like alcohol's legal, and not everybody gets addicted to alcohol, becomes an alcoholic, but some do. And we ought not just say, well, alcohol is a legal product, and forget it. We ought to say, well, there's a downside to the abuse of alcohol, and what can we do to prevent it and to stop it and to help people that get caught into that addiction. 12-step program. Maybe we need to have a 12-step program for, in fact, pornography. And I actually have heard people talk about their own addiction and say, I had to go through a process to eliminate that addiction from my physical body, however their brain functions. So I think good on Todd. He's taken a tough issue that needs to be have a good, frank discussion about.
Taking road money for water. We talk about there's a sales tax earmark going to roads, and then they're gonna take they may take some of it for water. Would you rather get rid of the earmark? Are you a lot happy putting some of it into water? What you talk about?
Well, again, the number one function of the legislature in coming into session is to, in fact, create a budget. Their job is to spend the money. They have every authority to spend every dollar the way they think it should be done. I've been concerned that with earmarking that they tie their own hands, that they don't have the ability to debate the issues and prioritize after a good, healthy discussion debate that here's where we're going to put our money. If it's transportation, okay, but it ought to be debated in contrast to what other areas of concern are out there. Water, health and human services, education. I mean, there ought to be that healthy debate. So I'm concerned that, particularly in the general fund, the earmarks are now eroding the ability to have money. 43% of all the new money in the general fund is being taken off the table without any discussion or debate. And I don't think that's healthy policy. I don't think it's what the legislature should do. They need to have the debate to make the tough decision. So that's my concern of earmarks. Taking it off of transportation and putting it onto water just means we've got an earmark that's just no reduction. We just moved it to another place. That being said, I clearly believe that we need to start addressing the issue of water in this state in a very positive vein, meaning what are we going to do for the future growth that's surely going to come to Utah? We already see that we're about the 5th fastest growing state in America today. We have a great quality of life. We have economic opportunity. There is no reason to believe we're not going to have continued in-migration from people outside of our state saying, I want to come and participate in this great Utah experience. And of course, we have a higher birth rate. So internal and external growth is a part of it. Water is the only limiting factor that we have to growth in Utah. So it's certainly a necessary component. We ought to discuss it. I wish the legislature would just get together and say, after we look at all the priorities, let's put more money into water. And they don't need the earmark to do that. They just need to have some common sense.
Last question. You had some language in your budget brief about wanting to make sure that there's a documented demand and the water's there, and that there's a plan for paying it back. And all of this seemed to be kind of pointed toward the Lake Powell pipeline in particular. We can specifically on the Lake Powell pipeline, is that something the state needs to be putting into right now? It's a sound investment.
Well, people ask me all the time, what is it that keeps you awake nights, Governor? And it's the growth pressures of a state that is growing very rapidly. The concentration that we have here along the Wasatch Front is noted. But there are other areas like southern Utah, up in Logan, the Bear River Basin, that again have growth pressures that really are going to have additional water. So how we address that is significantly important. And it's going to be a two-pronged attack. One, we need to conserve more. That's got to be at the top of the list. Conserve, stretch the water resources we have to accommodate growth. We're going to have, a transition that takes place as we have some of our rural areas, our agricultural interest, that now transition to more urban. And the good news for us as we transition from rural to municipal and industrial use, that transition in Utah works pretty well on a one-to-one basis. So this dynamic that's taking place here with the growth pressures of Utah is something that I'm very concerned about. The pressures of growth are real. But the top of that list for me, and it's not been a very much a political issue, I was talking about this back when I was lieutenant governor, is the future of water in Utah. And we need to develop what we can to augment what we can save as we accommodate the growth that's surely coming. There are two areas of the bigger projects that we talk about, Lake Powell Pipeline and the Bear River Basin. I would say for us to do anything to expend monies, which are going to be in the hundreds of millions, if not $1 billion or more, we need to have data. What is the science? What is going to be the cost for the end user? Because those who benefit should be the ones that pay the cost. And so their water rates are going to go up. In southern Utah for the Lake Powell Pipeline, how much? Is that going to be a 40% increase, 100% increase, 200% increase? We ought to understand what it is and say to the people, we're going to build this pipeline project and you're going to pay for it. Are you prepared to have that kind of an increase in your rates? Who's going to maintain it and what are the costs? I mean, I hear the Lake Powell Pipeline now is up to maybe $1.8 billion. I want to make sure that the people involved in this understand the cost and are ready to shoulder that. State has I think, an opportunity to help facilitate that. We've had in the past, the federal government through the Department of Reclamation has given a lot of federal money to help with our reclamation, our water project in the past. That's no longer the case. We've got to shoulder this burden by ourselves, which I actually think is probably good policy change, but it means we're not going to get a lot of help out of Washington, D.C. We've got to shoulder that burden ourselves, and the state has a role to play in that. But it's not just the Lake Powell Pipeline, it's the Bear River Basin too. And we need to get good science and good data. If we don't have that, we have a hard time developing the right policy and the right process and pathway forward to develop these water projects. So I'm very concerned about making sure we have data and then develop a plan as opposed to here's a plan and then develop the data. I think that's backwards.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you again next week. Thank you.